Hi everyone, Mark here from Cleve Racing and welcome to this week's weekly news wrap-up. A bit later than usual, obviously been out and about, busy, socialising, going to the pub, going away for the weekend. I wish. So we're in I'm not sure if it's week 7 or week 6, is it, of the lockdown. And as I said, it feels like it's been like this, always been like this. So we're all eagerly awaiting the government's plans to see what the easing of the restrictions are going to be and what those are going to entail. Your guess is as good as mine. Now, I've done something a little differently this week in the fact that I've grouped some of the news reports together as themes. And the first theme I want to look at really is obviously when's racing going to return. Now, authorities in various countries are all desperately trying to get racing resumed as quick as possible, but obviously this has got to be in the context of what governments will allow and whether it's going to work behind closed doors, etc. So, obviously the first racing in Britain is working towards a resumption on the 15th of May. Now, apparently they've had positive meetings with the government over the last 7 days. The most recent of which was on Wednesday, and touch wood, things may go ahead on the 15th of May. French racing are looking to go ahead next Monday, so that's the 11th of May. Now, the rest of sport in France has been suspended until September, so whether this is actually going to happen or not, I'm not sure. And racing in Ireland, we're looking to go ahead on the May the 18th, but they've been a bit stunned in the fact that Taoiseach laid out some plans for the resumption of sport in 3 phases, and racing was included in phase 3, which is the 29th of June. So that's some time away. Now, one thing that you need to know that it's French racing and Irish racing are slightly different to UK racing in the fact that they come under the Ministry of Agriculture, not the Ministry of Sport. So there'll be different ministers dealing with French and Irish racing than with British racing. So again, it's all up in the air. So France and Ireland are part of the Agriculture Ministry. German racing was set to go ahead today at Dortmund, but the city of Dortmund said that basically in the short term there's no chance of them restarting because they can't be legally compliant to resume. Now, one thing, Germany has started lifting the lockdown in various phases, and they opened some certain shops in Germany, and what they found there is they've got a spike in cases again. So they may be re-looking at that and going back into lockdown. South Africa, there's a dire situation there as tracks face bankruptcy, and they've been told they'll be shut down for a further 2 weeks. I think there's one particular company that owns quite a few of the racetracks in South Africa, and they've basically said they're going to go bankrupt if they don't resume shortly. And the backdrop to all this is obviously when it's going to start and how it's going to start. And there's a very interesting interview that Nick Luck did on Luck on Sunday yesterday and at the races. And just to give you some background, Nick Rust of the BHA actually resigned in January and was going to step down at the end of this year. And he's put on his quote here on the BHA post page, 2020 promises to be a great year for British racing. I believe we can achieve more things together this year if we continue to focus on a progressive approach that keeps British racing relevant, understood and accepted. Little did you know, Nick, that by this time this year, you'd be fighting for your very industry. Now, the backdrop to this is there's been a bit of a bun fight internally in the industry with Rafe Beckett and supported by Mark Johnson and a couple of other high-profile trainers complaining about the BHA's response and their planning of resuming racing. It's a very good interview with Nick Luck, who takes Rafe Beckett to task And this has all come about because the emails he sent to, what's her name, Anna Marie Phelps at the BHA were leaked to the Daily Telegraph. And to be honest with you, watching the interview, I think it's a bit thin from Rafe Beckett on his defence of what's been said and how he's gone about it. So you can take your view on it. You can watch the interview there. It's quite a good interview. And we'll see what comes out of the wash with that. Now, going back to the resumption of racing, the BHA have revealed their big race schedule and basically the resumption of the patent. So if we have a look at that. So they've announced that this is the plan for the last 2 weekends in May. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pattern races on the first weekend, another 2, 4, 6, 8 on the second weekend, and then you've got the Guineas weekend for the first weekend in June. So there's a lot of races included in there from the pattern, but there's a lot of races excluded as well. So read that at your leisure. Now, to back that up, ITV have announced that they will be covering racing on the Saturday and the Sunday of those weekends, and Ed Chamberlain's going to be hosting the show from his home studio. So they won't be on course, but they'll have live feeds from the course. So it'll be interesting to see that happen, how that works out. But in a way, one good thing about that is that it'll be the only televised sport for some time. So it might attract a huge audience, and it might get a lot of people who've not really been involved in racing before getting into the sport. So in a way, it could be a good thing. So we'll see how that pans out, and hopefully we can get some racing on the TV and get more people involved in it. I've put a few good news stories here. Sheikh Mohammed is going to, he's donating 60 tons of PPE. Now, what that equates to, I don't know, in terms of how many masks, gloves and aprons, etc. But really, he's obviously had a long-standing relationship with the UK, supported British horse racing for many, many years. And he's obviously got deep pockets, being the ruler of Dubai. Well, in saying that, I don't know how deep they are now with the oil price going through the floor. So, yeah, he's shipped in 60 tons of PPE equipment. Frankie Dettori's delivered his first batch of 1,000 bottles of iPro. Have a look at the website. I did look at the website, and I'm trying to work out what a hydration drink is. If it's not water, apparently it's got lots of vitamins in it and vitamin C and all sorts of stuff, you know. Now, it's good news, but obviously when you read between the lines, Frankie is a shareholder in the business, so it's free marketing and publicity for them. But well done, Frankie, to give the NHS some hydration drinks. Another bit of good news is that the industry is going to get a bit more money from the levy board because they, when they've done the figures, they've got a better than expected yield from the bookmaking industry. So that's another £2 million on top of the £22 million support package that they've committed to. So that's more good news. One thing I did like is Ocean Murphy, delighted to do his bit as riding lesson raises £6,000 for charity. Basically, Bonhams had a charity auction, a celebrity charity auction, and people with more money than sense spent huge amounts on various items people had put up for auction. So this one was for a riding lesson, which somebody's paid £6,000 for. I think somebody paid £22,000 for a visit to Grayson Perry's art studio, and somebody who has got more money than sense paid £5,500 for a lunch with Joan Collins and Christopher Biggins. Now, I'm sorry, if I'd paid for that, I just wouldn't go. So, yeah, people with more money than sense. One thing that is concerning with the resumption of racing being behind closed doors is the fact that, if you think about it, there's going to be no on-course bookmakers. Now, generally, on-course bookmakers have a factor in determining the starting price of the SPs of all races. So they're putting in proposals and plans of how they're going to actually generate SPs. And this means that the big bookmakers are basically going to have a stranglehold on setting prices. Now, the Horse Racing Betting Forum have demanded a lot more clarity on how this is going to work. And also, is this then going to become the norm when racing resumes as normal? Now, one thing you need to be aware of is that on-course bookmakers actually get paid a fee, or part of their income comes from generating the SPs. Now, it's hard enough being an on-course bookmaker as it is. And if they take away that particular element of their income, plus the rising fee pitches, etc., you'll end up with no on-course bookmakers. And the big bookmaking industry will be determining SPs, and you'll probably see huge overround books, less prices, worse terms, etc. So this is something that's going to rumble on. And later on in the week, I'm going to be doing an interview with Matt from GG's, who used to sit on the Horse Racing Betting Forum and has got a lot of knowledge about this, and he'll explain what the ramifications are and why we should be very cautious about it. And finally, from GG's again, we've got another very well-researched post from the team at GG's on trainers 2-year-olds, and this is the second part of their 2-year-old debutante series. And again, very well researched, lots of stats, lots of data, and some very good conclusions, so well worth the read and could put some money in your pocket when racing does restart. So that's it for this week. Stay safe, stay calm, and stay sane, and hopefully we'll have racing back on in the next, 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll go from there.